Welcome to Embedded FM, the show for people who love building gadgets. I'm Elecia White, here with Christopher White. Today we're going to chat with each other.
Assuming we can actually talk for longer than 5 minutes.
Ah, come on. That horrible cold you gave me is almost over.
It sounds like it.
So satellite entries, conference talks, battlebots, or 100 episodes. Where do you want to start?
I guess satellite entries.
So we had that Planet Labs contest, and I announced the winners last week, but I didn't really talk about what entries we got, because we got some pretty neat satellite descriptions. Stuart, who won the grand prize of Karl space program.
It's pretty grand.
It was a grand prize. He said he would put a camera in a satellite, although he admitted that was sort of boring. But he wanted to put an OpenMV camera, get it to perform face tracking, and take snapshots of all the landscapes that look like faces from space.
Oh, I misread that one the first time. I thought he was going to look at all the faces from space.
Oh, I see.
Which I thought would require optics that wouldn't necessarily fit in a Planet Labs satellite.
He said he did have a few other ideas and shared a couple. But then he said, I can't share all my mission ideas with you. You might tell Planet Labs. So, yeah. And then there was Shane, who won one of the books. And he said he wanted a swarm of satellites to go into space with their mission to observe pollution and radiation in the atmosphere using a spectrometer. And he wouldn't really measure the visible spectrum. I thought that was kind of interesting because that's a lot of what Planet does.
Yeah.
I wondered. But when I talked to him later, it was apparent that was a coincidence.
No, it's usual remote sensing stuff. It's the same kind of thing they do for Mars orbiters and things, so sure.
He wanted the swarm to move based on optimal atmospheric conditions versus optimal solar power method. And I thought maybe he needed Kerbal Space Program because moving a swarm is not easy.
Well, if you'd read Seveneves from Neal Stephenson, you would understand more about swarm behavior of satellites.
It's on my list. You liked it, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. To go on a complete tangent, but it's a really good disaster book for
near
at least
sci-fi.
The first. Yeah, definitely near sci-fi. Disaster kind of story for the first 2/3, and then not so much for the last 2/3. The first 2/3, I was talking to a friend from college, and he said the first 2/3 weren't really like a normal Stephenson book because it was a lot of action and very kind of downer. But then the last third was really the high-tech Stephenson playing around with the consequences of things and typical Stephenson non-ending at the end of that one. No real spoilers here, but it's kind
of... The moon blows up, and that's not a spoiler.
It's kind of a spoiler, but I guess it happens pretty early in the book. So
it happens on like the first line.
Does it?
Yeah.
I can't remember.
I haven't even read the book, but yes, it's in all the description. The moon blows up. What happens after that?
Moon blows up and it's bad. And then it's a lot of the consequences of that and how it's kind of a story of how with the technology we have right now, if we had 2 years to save ourselves.
To get off this planet.
To basically get off the planet, what could we do? And I thought it was he definitely took some liberties with what would be possible, but it was an interesting exploration of that problem. Not exactly uplifting, at least the first part.
Well, I'd like to believe that we're pretty ingenious when it requires us to do something or die.
Yeah, but part of the idea was we're not going to be able to invent new launch vehicles in that time. We're going to have the launch vehicles we have now. We can make a lot of them, but they're going to be what we've got. So what can you launch on the existing rocket technology? Because you have no time to come up with anything else. So it was good. And, once they were in space and doing stuff, there was some really clever ideas about things and the things you were talking about, swarm behavior. So I highly recommend it, especially for people into space and even kind of the embedded systems world, because he did talk about technology pretty deeply. Kind of compare it to
about technology. Neal Stephenson.
Yeah. Well, in this one, it was better than the previous book where it was just kind of
Reamdy?
Part of the book, but not the focus. This was more survival technology, I guess, which was interesting. And I'd compare it to The Martian in terms of how the technology was addressed.
You didn't give it as many stars as The Martian, though.
Yes, I did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Why have I been slacking on reading that book?
Because it's like really long.
Well, and the stupid cold you gave me.
Yes, it has stopped you from reading. Wait a minute.
It has stopped me from reading anything good. I'm totally this book is total junk and I don't care how anything happens.
So, yeah, it's a good book. People should read it. But not if they're depressed. Great. So the last winner satellite was from Jonathan. And he wanted to have a satellite to carry a bunch of tiny ESP 8266 modules with batteries and a parachute and release them so they land scattered around a desert or somewhere where people aren't expecting Wi-Fi and they can broadcast to networks. There's a Doctor Who reference that didn't really make sense to me, The Bells of St. John. I don't remember that episode.
Where a bunch of people turn up like Burning Man-ish and get a disturbing list of alien Wi-Fi points to connect to.
Okay.
It was, I guess if you're going to draw something from space, that's pretty cool. I can see dropping them over North Korea.
How are they going to re-enter without burning up?
I don't think that logic has a role in this. But that does lead me to ESP 8266. And I had a show about that. But one of the things one listener emailed was that there is an Arduino IDE. You don't have to go through the pain of setting up the whole toolchain on your own. So I'm going to link to the Make article about setting up the Arduino IDE to program for the ESP 8266. Seems like if you're going to use one of those really cheap, nifty Wi-Fi modules, you shouldn't go through the pain and suffering of a whole toolchain setup.
Yeah, that makes it a lot easier.
Yeah. And it does some of the Arduino features. It's got some of the Arduino libraries. But once you've used Arduino a couple of times, you kind of get bored of that. And then you're ready to go through the toolchain setup.
Well, that means you could integrate into a robot pretty easily, especially if you've already got some sort of Arduino thing going on.
Yeah. So that was cool. I also got a link to the NRF 52, a new Bluetooth module for even lower power BLE. But I haven't looked at that, so I don't know what I'd say about it. Let's see. We had Andre. Andre responded to the satellite. Andre was on, so I'm not sure he qualifies anymore. And yet he has a number, so he must have gotten into my random number mix.
I don't think we disqualify anybody based on previous...
Having been on the show?
Yeah, I don't think you said that.
No, and definitely, if you're in my family, you can't participate because, I think your dad listens to the show, but I'm not sure anybody else does.
He doesn't want Kerbal Space Program anyway.
He would. And he's already got a copy of my book.
So Andre
wanted combustible gas detectors, which sounded boring, but he has a theory. The sun spews space stuff, his words, every time we have a solar prominence. And shortly after, about 70 hours after, it rains on Earth. And you can Google solar activity and rainfall correlation.
Isn't it always raining somewhere?
Well, it was funny. He goes on to say there's a dude in Britain that predicts weather by watching solar activity and has much better accuracy than meteorologist people. I'm like, it's Britain. It's going to rain. I mean, the only other place you could do is like Wales, where it's like, oh, just wait 5 minutes and the weather's different. I've never been to Wales.
I think that's usually said about Maine.
Oh, I probably said it about Scotland too. And so he wants the combustible gas detectors to look for the sun pushing off oxygen and hydrogen in the solar wind, and then use that to determine when water on Earth is happening.
Okay.
He lives in Canada. I think he cares about the weather a lot more than we do.
I'm not sure what combustible gas has to do with it.
That's hydrogen.
So, yeah, well, okay, but...
And oxygen.
Yeah, I understand that. Although that's an oxidizer, not a combustible gas. Is the theory that they're going to combine when they reach the Earth and drop water? Is it like water from the sun? Is that the idea? Or is it nucleation sites that are being... I think what actually happens...
I think it would have to rain all over the world.
I think what actually happens is the solar wind particles come through and they create nucleation sites as they go through the atmosphere, if there is an actual correlation.
Wait a minute, are you using science here?
Science. I'm a scientism.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the title. We have to be nice to Andre, though, because...
I'm being nice. I'm just thinking about it.
Oh, all right. That's fine. But we still have to be nice to Andre. Because I posted a linker article about measuring power. And while it wasn't grossly wrong, I was clearly feverish when I wrote it. It had some pretty big like holes to drive trucks through. And Andre was so nice. And even the parts where I generally just want to measure power, I don't really care about all the details as long as nothing's exploding. And Andre took a lot of time to set me straight on how to do the power calculations for how big your resistor needs to be and how much power it needs to be able to suck. So I need to update my linker post.
Oh, I thought you already edited that.
Well, I took out the like one awful part, but and Andre pointed out that this didn't make sense, and I realized that I hadn't copied a couple of paragraphs over. I'm not as pleased with that one as I was with the BLE one.
Well, you have an excuse.
I was feverish. I'm going to put that at the top of the post.
Just make it the title.
That's good. Simon wanted to put aquaponic robots in space to study fish and plants in space.
Wait, what?
Wait a minute. He wanted to put aquaponic robots in the satellite to study fish and plants in space.
So to study the fish and plants in space, not from space.
In space.
Okay.
Because he wants more data on how to grow stuff there so he can travel further. So that goes back to getting off this planet.
So he's going to launch little farms.
Well, Wesley had a very similar idea that he wanted to send one of those closed ecosystems in a jar.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Make a little tiny Earth too. I think we should actually do that as like 100 satellites and make little tiny closed ecosystems and send them all over the world so we can see the world. Wait a minute. This was a Star Trek episode.
Oh.
Anybody who's waiting for the technical part of the show probably should just give up.
It's very technical. We've talked about science and scientism.
Ada wanted a mind-controlled cockroach flying the spaceship. Have you seen those little, you can use a chip to control the cockroach? I find that a little weird.
Well, that I understand, but a mind-controlled cockroach would imply that you're controlling the cockroach with your mind.
Oh, I thought it was just the cockroach's mind was being controlled.
Okay.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Because that we have the technology.
Maybe we should come back to some more of these.
All right. And there are a few more.
We'll put a pin in that.
Yeah. Okay, so what else did you want to talk about?
What was else on the list here?
Conference or 100 episodes?
I don't care about 100 episodes right now. Let's talk about conferences.
The Solid will be half over when this is posted. Though if you're in San Francisco and going to Solid, my talk is Thursday afternoon. We're giving away books, my book, at lunch on Wednesday. But again, the show will probably be posted by, in such a time that you would have to listen and then immediately present yourself to receive a book. Which
is not out of the question. People are strange.
Well, and you have to post it pretty early because we have to go.
No, it's fine. I'll post it.
Maybe even Tuesday. So what do you want to see at Solid?
What do I want to see? That was a question for you. What do you want to see?
Oh, I
know you're giving a talk, but what do you want out of Solid?
Solid, I'm kind of excited about. It's the Internet of Things and hardware and software. And last year, I sort of thought it was weird and not really a real conference because it couldn't decide whether it was hardware or software or business or processors. But this year I'm excited about that. I don't really know why.
Is it because you've been beaten down?
No, I've had a really light workload recently.
No, I mean by just so much exposure to everything's about the Internet of Things and things that you're either excited or you get out of the business.
Yeah, maybe. No, Chris Gamble will be there. He had to talk about I don't know, cloud data and parts IO and hardware.
Yeah, I think it's sort of a loosely connected to parts IO and talking about how big data, supply chain and stuff can work together.
Yeah, so I'll probably go to that. And there were a lot of talks about little robots. I want to do more moving things.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's one of the reasons I got into embedded, and I haven't done that in a while. It's like seeing stuff actually move and affect the physical world. Yeah, I don't know about Solid. I do worry that it's a little bit... What's the word I want to use without being mean?
I can't say it's non-technical.
A little bit
the talk
hypey.
I'm giving is so technical.
A little bit hypey, maybe?
It is a little bit hypey. It is a little more business markety side and less engineering side.
That's what it is. And so I haven't really looked at the other collection of sessions and stuff.
I'm pleased. My talk is the inertial intro to inertial.
That's pretty technical.
Yeah, you got the preview of that.
Right.
When we went to go do it when I was really sick. And, you know, I go through inertial sensors and Kalman filters and quaternions and trigonometry in like 35 minutes.
Maybe less, because you talk about some other stuff for at least 15.
Really?
Yeah, well, you talk about what? You talk about coordinate systems and which sensors are which.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's...
The math part, you jammed into about 10 minutes.
Every time I give the talk, it makes me want to laugh, and it makes me feel like my brain is slightly full. So I don't know if anybody else is going to get a lot out of the talk, but it's going to amuse me to no end.
So have you looked at the other sessions? Are there other talks of that order?
There were a few other talks, but I haven't spent a lot of time looking at the sessions. I tend to be really a butterfly when it comes to conference talks. I care more about if I know the person talking and if the chairs are comfortable than about the actual material. I figure most of the material is good, but I don't want to have to limp all day. I know my conference attending is kind of strange that way. But I'm going to meet people, so a lot of my time will be spent wandering around.
All right. And then ESC is coming up a couple of weeks
later.
A month after?
About a month, yeah.
A month. And you're giving a talk there on, I forget, because there were 3, and now you were switching between them.
Oh, faker to maker in 45 minutes or less. The talk is sort of in response to working with people who are sort of afraid of the maker community, who are tentative about what that means for real engineering.
So like old school business people or engineers who got into the business when that didn't exist, or?
Yeah, you know, I had a manager a little while ago, not that long ago even, who was just really tentative about whether or not he was a maker and really tentative about hiring people who had extracurricular things on their resume. He thought that would take away from their actual careers, which is such a different mentality from, you know, the other half of people who are like, if you don't have that on your resume, I don't want to talk to you. And so this talk was sort of to bridge that gap. But
it's kind of an odd topic for ESC, because ESC is such an industry.
And I thought they would take one of the technical talks.
Yeah.
Instead, they took this one.
Are they trying, you think, to branch out to address the maker community more?
Yeah.
Because every time I go there, I get a little bit more depressed about...
Well, and it's smaller this year in Santa Clara, and that's a far more
size, really. It's just that
ballroom.
it seems like it's always the same companies with the same booths selling the same products. I mean, I remember going there in, I want to say 99, because I think
definitely we went in 99.
Was trying to decide between a couple of jobs at that point. And, you know, we went last year and the year before and whatever. We go every year. But it really just doesn't seem any different. I feel like I'm seeing the same products over and over again, even ones that, you know, I saw 15 years ago. Yeah, sure, there's more single board computers and they're smaller and they have more power. But I don't know. It's a difference between an industry trade group and the kind of thing that Solid is, which is kind of an advocacy.
Yeah, Solid is about advocacy, and they're advocating the Internet of Things, which is a strange thing to advocate. But when you think about O'Reilly wanting to sell books and content, it makes sense for them to want to advocate for a whole industry. And ESC is more a trade where it's the processor vendors and the hardware vendors getting together with the engineers in a more technical orientation.
But I feel like there's room to do both at ESC and make it a better conference because you've got the nuts and bolts there. So I hope with things like adding topics like you're talking about, that'll help a little bit. And there have been good stuff there. I mean, Jack Gansel spoke there last.
He speaks there a lot.
So there's.
He's usually pretty fun to listen.
I'm probably being too hard on it, but
no, they've had some changes. I'm a little tentative about ESC this year. I'm a little tentative about my talk because it's sort of fluffy, and it's probably 20 minutes of material wrapped up in 45 minutes.
Yeah, and who the audience is.
Who the audience is the hardest part.
Because a lot of the people there are those sales reps and sales engineers and people who are making deals booth to booth. And they aren't necessarily people who are going to go to a lot of talks on stuff. I don't know.
We'll see who comes. Maybe somebody who wants comfy chairs and a reasonably amusing speech.
Yeah, and maybe somebody will set me straight and say, no, ESC is cool because of this. You should go and talk to these people instead of these people.
Well, there's always the beg for dev kits, but right now I've actually got plenty. So I'm not even begging for dev kits right now.
Yeah, I can't fit my podcasting computer on the desk because of the stack of dev kits, which is kind of falling down.
I know. It's less a stack and more a pile right now. My desk is really bad.
I don't even know if some of these have been opened.
Oh, they've all been opened. Some of them are leaking out of their boxes. You can see that one there. It's escaped.
You should start doing YouTube unboxings of dev kits.
Yeah, except all I would do would be unbox it, look at it, and think, oh, wait, I forgot to use ESD on it. Use any ESD protection on it. Oh, well, I'll put it back in the box. I'm sure it still works.
You just touch every point, and then the ESD is spread all over.
Exactly. Exactly. So I'm going to go on to 100 episodes. We don't have to stay there. We can wander back and forth.
We've had 100 episodes.
Well, no, I did that big spreadsheet where I actually listed out all 100 episodes, who the guests were. Yeah. I put tags on it. And then I didn't know what to do with it. I was so excited because I finally had a list of, where you should start and people's favorite episodes. And instead of even telling people that this sheet existed, I just sort of...
Well, you should pick 10 episodes and we should put it on the website.
Oh, well, I have that because it's in the sheet, actually.
All right. You should send it to me and I'll put it on the website.
I'm going to link the sheet in the show notes. So.
Yeah, but if you wanted a starter pack, it could be done.
Oh, okay. All right. But as part of the whole 100 episode things, I did the survey.
Right, the survey.
The survey. That was the exciting part. I mean, this sheet is cool because it makes it look like we've done a whole lot of things, but the survey was pretty hilarious. So
what prompted you to do this?
Well, we were doing the 100 episodes, and I just kind of wanted to know, it was a good, it was a line in the sand, and then I wanted to know what the best show title was. Should I be saying embedded? Should I be saying embedded FM? Should we go back to making embedded systems? And then the tagline, because that had been changing. I had been saying the show for people who love gadgets, but it isn't really who love gadgets. It's people who build gadgets. And then I found out a lot of you hate the word gadgets. Sorry about that. I don't think I can change it at this point.
What?
It's true. That was one of the comments.
Why can't you change it?
Well, because I don't know what else to say. What would you? The show for people who love building embedded systems sounds really dorky.
Thingies.
Thingies?
Who love making thingies.
Maybe we should change it so it's every week it's a different word.
Yeah, if you don't like gadgets, then you're going to have to deal with some other word. That's worse.
Widgets.
Dinguses.
Dingus. Yeah. We had a long conversation about the etymology of dingus this week.
The definition of dingus is doodad.
Right.
Look it up.
Yeah. So we could just change it to a random series of words. Although one of the survey responses for what should we do different is quit changing the intro because it makes people crazy.
What's changed about the intro?
Oh, I say the words differently and I introduce you slightly differently every time. And
that makes people crazy?
I don't know. It was pretty funny.
I thought it was too samey.
Well, the other thing was the outro. I got a lot of comments about it being too abrupt.
Well, I'll put a ding at the end or something.
The final thoughts seem to be a lot like the cat episode. People either loved it or despised them. Oh, there was the comment that you could talk more.
I will talk as much or as little as I feel necessary.
Sorry. I wondered if you were going to add to that. Oh, people don't like the sticker. People don't like the design of the logo. All right. If you want to design a logo for us, you are welcome to.
If you want to do free work for us, we'll accept it.
Yeah. I'm with the sticker design, it was harder than I thought it would be. I'm happy with how it came out.
Design is very hard. Art is very hard.
Art is very hard. And I have ideas for a better logo, but I just don't have the time on my computer that isn't spent doing other things.
Well, and I think neither of us are really artists in that space, so.
Yeah. And then I started to design this logo, and I realized it looked just like the contextual electronics one. So that was sort of bad.
So we'd have to shut them down.
Exactly.
If we get a trademark on it first, then we can go after Chris.
Ooh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
All right. Don't tell him.
Right. So the survey results were, as you would expect, a mix of people saying, I like this and I hate this, all about the same this. So there's nothing we can really do.
Well, there was more cowbell, more Wilhelm scale.
Unless people who liked one thing.
And more dance numbers.
Right. Right. I can do more cowbell. Maybe we could end the show with a cowbell. That'd make people happy.
All right, we can fix the outro and the cowbell at the same time.
Yeah. Or we could end it with a Wilhelm scream.
They wanted our favorite musical band, the Ballistic Kitten,
That's not a band.
to record a techie intro music for the show. We have intro music for the show.
And it's techie. I don't understand the question.
I wanted outro music.
Yeah, I'll get to that someday.
You just didn't like how I described what I wanted.
Because it was over-constrained and impossible.
Techno
Sleepy
surf lullaby.
techno surf lullaby. Yeah.
I don't know how that's not perfectly imaginable.
Well,
Can't
surf
you hear the
usually
music in my head?
surf usually has drums, and lullabies usually do not. And techno usually has electronic instruments, and surf music does not.
I'm the artist. I'm the visionary here.
This is
Just make it so. In the survey results, we had a question. Is there a role for an embedded software engineer at NASA?
Of course there is.
Of course there is. There are so many.
Everything they do, all of the robots are embedded software.
Oh, the robots, the landers, the space.
They're all running real-time operating systems. They're all running on embedded processors. Yes, that's all there is.
Well, they have some pure software too.
Sure.
But yes, there's so much at NASA you could do as an embedded software engineer. Although if it were me, I would go to SpaceX.
I don't know. Because, SpaceX isn't really doing anything beyond launch vehicles right now.
Right now.
Yeah.
I suspect
But if you go to NASA, you're going to get to work on things that are going to Europa soon and other probes that go to Mars. You get to send stuff that drives around on a real planet. Another planet.
Really cool.
Not that Earth isn't a real planet. Whereas SpaceX, you're pretty much, you're doing guidance systems and flight control systems, which are really cool, but I don't know. Yeah. I also think the hours at SpaceX likely exceed those at NASA by a fair margin. Yeah,
it doesn't seem like the sort of place you can go and slack.
I heard that the interns that work there, of which they have hundreds, get to choose whichever 80 hours of the work week they want to work.
Wow. That doesn't really sound like fun. But
it's flex time.
Get paid a lot.
It's flex time. You can get all your work done Monday through, say, Thursday by working continuously. And then you've got 3 days off to sleep.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, I'm not sure I want overtired people working on flight control systems. Really.
Critical systems, yeah. Some people wanted less art, less business, and less education stuff. I have to tell you, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's pretty much our thing.
Spark Gap podcast gets pretty technical and stays there. And
so does
they don't do as
Amp Hour.
much. So I think I'm happy with basically talking to people who I find interesting, which tends to be more of a range.
I think it's going to be a mix. We're going to talk, some shows are going to be very technical and some are going to be completely off the wall.
Yeah, and we won't do another cat show, I promise. It was hilarious.
Yeah, we have 2 dogs, though.
One last comment. Elecia needs a PR30 and Chris needs a PR40.
Yeah, okay, whatever.
I don't even know what those are.
Those are Heil microphones.
I see. But there was a question about what the gear and software we use. I know you're not that interested in having a show about the show, but
okay, so
could you run it down?
I can run it down. My microphone is a Shure SM7B, which is a normal broadcast mic. Yours is a Rode Procaster, which we probably should replace at some point, although I'm not sure your voice matches Heil's. We'd have to figure out what the best mic was. The mics go into a Focusrite dual mono mic pre ISA 2, which is just a microphone preamp. Those go into a Focusrite Scarlett audio USB interface, and that goes into my computer. And then I use Logic software from Apple to edit. And we have guests who call in on Skype. We have a separate computer for that entirely, a little HP Stream Mini that goes straight into the Scarlett audio interface. So we have Skype on a separate track, and guests don't have to fiddle with their own software. If they have Skype and they have a mic, they're good to go.
And we send them a mic sometimes.
Yeah. Other than that, that's pretty much it, but that's actually a lot for most podcasts. I probably gone overboard with equipment.
Well, and part of that is because you are a musician and you had some of this equipment.
Right. The microphone preamp I use for music.
And now that we're using this for the podcast and the podcast is advertising for the company, now you can write off all this stuff. So we have
sure
better stuff.
And my mic's a good kick drum mic. I've used it on tracks. So, yeah, as far as the mic question, mics are very personal to voice. So I haven't been really itching to switch anything. I kind of like how mine sounds on this mic. Maybe other people don't.
Mine sounds better when I'm not sick.
Yeah, right now is not a good time to evaluate. I do know Dan Benjamin was selling some Heil PR40s from his studio, and I thought about it, but there's still 400 used. And
on the other hand, if you work for Heil and you'd like us to try your microphones, please send them with a self-addressed stamped box, and
Sure. Anything else on the survey that was interesting or funny or about what you expected, not what you expected? How many responses did you get?
I got 173 responses, which was a good number. Most of them I got in the first 2 weeks of it being open. And I got a list of what is your favorite episode and which episodes do you recommend to someone who's never heard the show. And that fed into the spreadsheet. So people who liked episodes a lot, or episodes that a lot of people liked, ended up having more.
Yeah.
Let's see. I guess one of the interesting things was the question, professionally, what describes your primary role? Unsurprisingly, a quarter of you are embedded software engineers. I guess it is sort of surprising because I thought more of you would be. 20% are hardware engineers. 11% are non-embedded software. We have a few managers out there and a few students. And then a whole quarter, again, are other. From sysadmins to retired to all sorts of people.
It's a good mix.
It is. It's a good mix, and it tells me that, we talk about software, we talk about embedded, we talk about hardware, but talking about other stuff is good too. Let's see. I don't know. Why do you listen to the show? Most of you listen for the interesting guests and the useful information. Most of you do not listen for the cat interviews. Listen, I got that, okay? I got all the comments that said no more cat interviews. I agree. A good quarter of you are confirming your confirmation bias, so that was pretty amusing to me. And more people listen for Chris's pithy statements and jokes than for me to snort laugh. Was that too much pressure?
No, I just
I did write the form, so, there might have been some confirmation bias with the form.
Just struck me as an odd choice of things since there's rarely either.
You often have pithy statements.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I snort laughed on one with Jen, who hasn't been on in a while, and she's, we we will have her on again soon.
Really? I guess the last time was...
It really has been a long time. It's been Bia.
No, she was on with the 100 episode.
She was on with the 100 episodes.
5 episodes ago.
Oh, yeah. But we had Star, too, and we talked a lot more to Star because we hadn't talked to her. But yes, we'll have Jen back. So you wanted to talk about BattleBots, and I know everybody likes to listen to us talk about our TV viewing habits.
This is a TV viewing habit that's appropriate to embedded people.
What did you want to say about BattleBots?
So
was
we
it about
watched
Scorpion? Because I remember how much you liked Scorpion.
No, so we watched BattleBots last night.
Over the last couple.
Okay. And we went to one of the actual competitions years and years ago.
Years and years ago.
Doing them.
And we almost went to this one.
Right. And I don't remember what channel they were on before, but it was like maybe Sci-Fi or Discovery or something like that. And I don't really remember how the show was organized back then. But this felt really weird. And so I'm happy there's a show that's kind of showing off robotics and fun stuff that the maker community's doing. I think that's great. I think it'll get kids interested, even as it is now. But the whole thing felt a little strange to me. And I think I tried to put it into words last night, and I said something like, it's like you were having Dungeons and Dragons, and the jocks in high school and the jocks and the cheerleaders burst into the room and started doing color commentary. And at first you were thinking, wow, this is pretty cool. I mean, I'm kind of into this. And then a few minutes later you start thinking, wait, are they mocking me? And that's how I felt with the show, because they had the commentary people were a mixed martial arts guy.
Yeah.
And some other guy from maybe football or something. I don't know who he was. And a woman who seemed like she was also a sportscaster type. And they had the whole NFL broadcast excitement with the fancy graphics and the swooping camera movements, in the studio, not looking at the robots, looking at the commentators. And the whole thing just felt like, we're going to pretend this is football.
They definitely had a very, very sports mentality.
We're going to pretend this is sports because, and here's the problem I get into. We're going to pretend this is sports because otherwise it's not interesting.
But that's not true at all. I mean,
not
it was
to me.
Interesting without the fluff.
That's what I thought. And I would like to spend more time seeing how they're built and how they work inside than I mean, they even use some of the same phrases. The tail of the tape goes to let's go to this, and it just sounded like you're pretending. It seemed like they were pretending because they were pretending. I don't think those people were really excited about robots at all. And you could tell the people who were excited about robots. They had Bobak, I can't say his last name, Ferdowsi, the NASA guy.
He was one of the judges.
Briefly, yeah, he was one of the judges. And they briefly talked to him, and he walked around while they were working on the robots. And they had Alison Hayslip, who was, I think, from G4, which was kind of a technical channel way back when they talked about computer stuff. So they had some people who were but they were kind of sidelined to be the judges who you never talk to again. They just give the numbers, and so it was very strange. And I don't know how you felt about it, but I felt like it was the wrong way to go about it. And maybe this is what you have to do on ABC to get people interested in a show like this. But I felt kind of bad.
I wanted a lot more looking at the robots, looking inside the robots. And you introduced me to Is It a Robot or Not?
Robot or Not, yeah,
Robot
podcast. It's John Syracusa and Jason Snell.
What people talk about, is this a robot? And they came down on the side.
World's shortest podcast.
They came down on the side that BattleBots are not robots.
I don't think they talked about BattleBots, but BattleBots would not be robots according to the other stuff they've talked about because they're just remote controlled. They don't have any autonomy.
And that actually is what I was hoping for the new BattleBots. I was hoping that, sure, you had control, but I wanted these robots to be smarter on their own. I wanted them to be more robots, and that would be far more interesting than basically an exercise in momentum, which is what most of those BattleBots end up being.
Yeah, they were all the same as last time, which was 10 years ago, or roughly.
Grant Imahara is the one that would come and shove an ice pick in you.
Yeah.
That would still have won, hands down.
Well, they all had flippers, they had ones with spinny things, they had some fire, but there was nothing new there. And maybe there's only so many things you can do with physics in that arena to move and destroy
bots.
Well, if you could make them
smarter.
Yeah. So that was kind of disappointing to me. So I don't know
you're
if
mostly disappointed not in the technology.
No, because
but in
I think
this
it's
idea
still
that ABC is mocking your brotherhood.
I don't think they're mocking exactly, but it feels like it.
They might be. Somebody there probably is.
It just felt like, here's the thing, the juxtaposition between the people who are competing and the people doing the presenting is so stark. Because you have these athlete people, and then you have that family from Wisconsin who are just farmers and uber nerds who this is what they do in their spare time in their barn. And they weren't cool people. And yet they did the little background tape on them, and they tried to make them seem super cool and dynamic with the zooming. I mean, they had the cows come up, and it was like, they're cows. It's a farm. This is not edgy.
If you showed me the tools they used to like harden their parts and to actually look at what they did with their motors, and even to tell me some of the rules. I know that these robots have to be, or these battlebots have to be a certain weight limit, and you have to be able to turn them off remotely in a way that puts them into a safe mode. And that sort of stuff I'd find interesting. But
would other people find interesting? Would the mass market find that interesting? I don't know.
I think our listeners would find that interesting.
Yeah. I don't know. So I don't want to belabor this point, but I just felt like it was more weird than it had been when it was on Discovery. Even on Discovery, I do remember it was kind of amped up.
Yeah, definitely.
But it didn't feel like such a weird dichotomy of, well, we're going to truck in these people who have nothing to do with anything that you're doing, and we're going to put you side by side, and they're going to pretend that they think it's cool, and you're going to pretend that you are cool, and we're going to make a show about it. And in our community, those people are cool. But I don't think that mainstream America necessarily thinks they're cool. And I'm going to get hate for this because I'm not coming down on the people who are competing. I'm really trying to say that the whole thing just smacks of a contrivance to me.
Well, we've been watching World Cup soccer, the Women's World Cup. And
right.
If you would never have a mixed martial artist do the color commentary for soccer.
Right.
You would not even have a football
right.
star be.
Yeah. Yes, I think you're getting to what bugs me.
Is that they've brought in people outside the community to comment on the community.
I would far rather see Chris Gamble and Dave
from EEV
Blog doing the color commentary, because that would be hilarious.
Oh, yeah, and they would ask good questions and, add in a couple other people. Lenore from Evil Mad Scientist and Jerry Ellsworth were already there. Pick those people up and have them talk about the robots.
And maybe some of those people aren't on camera kind of people, but there are people who are dynamic within the community who would make it interesting. And maybe the argument back is, well, nobody knows who those people are. I don't know who those other people are. I've never heard of the mixed martial arts guy. I've never heard of any of the other commentary people. The only people I have heard of were the two judges you don't talk to. So,
well, you recognize that woman who was on Warehouse 13.
No, she wasn't. I looked it up.
Oh, it wasn't the same
Yeah,
person?
she was from G4.
Okay.
But she was more from the community than the other people.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to be a gatekeeper, but come on. Mixed martial arts and robots, there's really...
But it's battle-y, and there's flames, and there's fighting, and there's judging, and this is... Yeah, it was a metaphor about too far.
I tell you what. If this doesn't sound weird to you, then have us do the Super Bowl next year.
Somebody's going to email and say, yeah, you two should do the Super Bowl live.
And then they stopped, and they're standing around. Oh, wait, they're going to have a play. Yes, there was a play. It's over. It's all over.
I actually like football.
Go to commercial.
Well, we would mostly comment on the commercials, I think.
So I don't know how you felt about BattleBots.
I demanded we skipped through a lot of it so we could just get to when the robots were fighting. So, yeah. I wasn't that thrilled. I don't know that we'll continue.
Yeah, that's
I would
sad.
rather watch Jeopardy.
Well, that's a personal problem.
More satellite entries. Kevin Fitch suggested a teapot filled with spaghetti and meatballs, which I have to admit was one of my personal favorites. He had a more serious idea involving LiDAR, but Yeah, who cares about that?
Spaghetti and meatballs don't go in teapots.
I know, it was all kinds of surreal. I that's what I liked about it.
Imagine if an alien found that.
I know.
It's been decades trying to figure out what it meant.
What is this writing that they use?
It's very squiggly.
It's organic and squiggly.
They probably think it was an actual being.
Well, yeah, because the meat.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's all kinds of cool stuff in there. And the teapot, is this the actual shape of the satellite?
Space exoskeleton. It's a spacefaring creature.
And that's the exoskeleton.
Yeah.
John Lehman had a good idea involving radar to do fine time analysis of earthquakes using a technique known as INSAR, interferometric synthetic aperture radar. He does work on earthquakes for his PhD. We got to talking about ShotSpotter, actually. I replied to John and said that ShotSpotter had a whole bunch of data where they've had those sensors sitting in like Oakland and in San Francisco collecting data for years about their position. And so they have really accurate positions, and they have the time change of the positions, you know, this month versus last month. And when I worked there were a couple of us who wanted to spend a good chunk of time on that data looking to see if we could find out about movement profiles of LA to San Francisco to Oakland.
And that's all GPS based?
It was all GPS based, but over long periods of time. Unfortunately, ShotSpotter does not tell you where their sensors are, and any paper written thereof would not be publishable, so it was all a pointless waste of time that we didn't get to spend anyway. It was sad. Antoon van Breda wanted satellites to look up. They wanted to make a radio telescope by having a whole flock of satellites.
Yeah.
Wasn't that in the plan at some point? Not for a planet, but isn't there a space radio telescope that was weirdly large with small satellites?
It rings a bell. I know they're thinking about that for infrared visible, well, not visible, but for infrared telescopes, where you can do that sort of array of small things that you know exactly where they are, so you can do interferometry with them and create a virtual huge telescope, which gives you really fine resolution. So instead of having a gigantic actual mirror, you have small mirrors at the edges of where the gigantic actual mirror is, and then you do magic between them to integrate the signal you get from all of them, and that gives you basically it doesn't have the same light gathering, but it does have the same resolution as a large mirror.
Yeah.
But it's hard to do at certain wavelengths because you have to have them at accurate positions within, quarter wavelength or half wavelength or something. So the higher the energy you go, the higher the smaller the wavelength you go, the more accurate your positioning has to be.
Well, that's
why infrared is possible, but
yeah.
Visible light hasn't really happened much. And radio is really easy. Well, comparatively.
Really easy. Let's get on that today. A lot of people wanted to build satellites to make satellites more accessible.
Sounds like the stuff that Stuart was doing.
Yeah, actually, Stuart, our grand prize winner, does work on satellites. He makes little cube satellites,
Pocket
cube. He had an article recently where he was interviewed about making his pocket cube.
Yeah, I saw a tweet to that effect. It was ABC Australia or something.
It's pretty cool. I think he'll be on the show. We'll ask him about making his own satellites.
I liked this one. Send up a satellite that's covered with LEDs. And then everybody could just see it going across the sky. And
that's how you introduce people to the concept of how satellites move.
And advertising. You have enough of them.
Oh, right.
In a segment array.
Well, actually, so that one was from Chris May. There was another one from Dave Wilson who wanted small mirrored satellites that can swarm and use the mirrors to form a dot matrix display in the sky.
Oh, see, I skipped ahead.
He was going to print "Hello World" as the first message.
That's funny, actually.
And Max wanted to make modular sensors that you could change around in the programmable micro, and then multiple people can upload their code to the satellite to monitor different things. Scheduling interface, chips to talk to sensors.
What do you want to send up?
The little dog who woke us up at 6 a.m. this morning.
Is that our dog?
Yeah.
Oh. Huh.
I must have a better idea than that, shouldn't I? I would like to look at different things on Earth. And Planet's been doing some of that. That was one of the reasons I liked talking to them. Different wavelengths and what it means. Not necessarily looking at people. Mm-hmm. I don't want to look at people's faces, although they do have optics for that. They've had that for a long time. I want to look more at the effects we have that are not necessarily in the visible spectrum. Some of that's pollution, but a lot of it's heat. The way humans change the heat is strange and kind of cool. It's not the same as light pollution, although there is some overlap.
Well, I think they have those. I think there's a lot of satellites monitoring temperature now.
Yes, but I don't have any of them.
I don't know. I'd want to send up something, if things got truly cheap, where you could send up, where it wasn't a major project to send up a satellite. I'd like to start testing some of the weirder ideas that people have had about space, like solar sails. I know they just sent something up.
Yeah.
That wasn't, I don't think it was really testing its sailiness, just whether it could be deployed.
Oh, I thought they were monitoring the energy gathering of the solar sail.
I'm sure there was some, but it wasn't doing it wasn't going anywhere or being, they were actually testing its propulsion capabilities. Yeah. Stuff like that. Or, there have been ideas about, and actually this was in Neal Stephenson's book, but I'd read about it before, where you tether two objects together and spin them around to make artificial gravity in each node, like two capsules on the end of a cable.
I would like to see the inertial measurement readings from both of those. That would be really cool.
So stuff like that, and testing ideas about space elevators. Well, I don't know how you do that at this point. But I just, I'd like to mix things up and have people start exploring some of the crazier ideas from science fiction, because a lot of the ideas from science fiction became reality. I mean, Arthur C. Clarke, I think it was Arthur C. Clarke, basically invented the idea behind geosynchronous satellites or telecommunication satellites.
It
was either Clarke or Asimov. I'm not sure which, but I think it was Clarke. Yeah. I think we should start being crazier, but that does mean a lot more junk up there, which could be another option. Figuring out
scoopers,
ideas for how to clean up some of the junk.
Yeah, I thought there was a contest about that recently. I guess I'll have to go look. One of the entries, although I don't have it in front of me, was about having a small shower for Sandra Bullock as she wanders from place to place, as she deals with gravity.
That movie.
I liked the idea that they were really bringing that piece of science forward, that someday...
hygiene in space?
No. Someday our satellites are going to have a serious problem, and it's going to wipe out a lot of them.
Well, it's already happened.
Not to that scale.
Yeah, almost. The Chinese blew up a satellite.
That was a while ago.
Mm-hmm. But it was a problem.
Oh, yeah, it still is.
And then I think another couple collided, amazingly, which is... If you think about how vast space is, the idea that two satellites actually would run into each other just randomly is pretty terrifying in its rareness. But yeah, I don't want to get on another pop culture rant about the movie, but that's not how anything works. I'll just leave it there.
Yes. Don't read The Martian and then watch Gravity, because the difference between them might make your head explode. Oh, but they're doing a movie for The Martian.
Yep. They are with Matt Damon.
It looked okay.
Looked okay so far. The trailer was fine. I think, I don't know how they're going to do the science without dumbing it way down.
Or just doing it quickly.
Just gloss over it.
Yeah. Do the science properly, but do it so quickly that you're only pandering to the 3% who care.
Kind of like how I code.
I don't understand how to take that.
I just do it so quickly that nobody can tell what I'm doing. I don't do a good job, just a quick job. I've done doing to silence, or you're having a stroke.
I don't think that's true. It doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't make any sense. But neither did gravity.
Was really that was like the brick joke? You're just setting me up for this long. Thank you for that. Oh, maybe after I'm sick, maybe after ESC, I'll be looking for work.
What do you want to do?
I want to do something a little mathy.
Mathy.
Yeah, I miss the motors. I miss PID controllers. I miss signal processing. I've been doing a lot of Internet of Things that don't require a lot out of me other than reading data sheets.
You know, it's got a lot of motors. BattleBots.
I hope somebody emails and says, there is an autonomous BattleBots.
Oh, I'm sure there is.
It's so much cooler.
Although I'm not sure that there are autonomous BattleBots where they fight. There's definitely, FIRST Robotics where they play soccer and stuff.
Well, and there's the DARPA Grand Challenge.
The DARPA Grand Challenge. Yeah, I meant to, they talked about it on the Amp Hour last week, or the week before, one of the two. And they had the video, and I haven't gone to watch it. I'm really, really interested in looking at that. Because it was apparently, they had the ones that were autonomous vehicles, but this was actually humanoid robots this year. And they had to go through a set of tasks.
And a lot of them missed on that doorway and fell down.
All right. Well, I'll go watch it.
Good video. Yeah.
I still, and I think Chris mentioned this, but I still don't understand, why are we making humanoid robots?
There are lots of reasons. One is that we're humans and we like that form factor because we think it is somehow superior.
It'll be friendly when they come to take over.
But I don't really know why you'd choose that over a four-legged, other than that cat one that Boston Dynamics did was terrifying to look at.
A cat? It was more of a hellhound.
All right, whatever it was just, I don't want it near me. And the people-shaped ones are a little easier to have near you.
But we're so terrible at moving around. We've evolved into this weird two-legged standing upright thing that doesn't even really work that great for us.
I know. Do you know how long it takes people to learn how to walk upright? That's like years.
Millions of years. Yeah. So you want to work on motors?
I want to work on motors or signal processing or even looking at big data in embedded systems. I mean, ShotSpotter was very much a math haven, and I miss math. Okay. And yet I probably will do another Bluetooth low-energy wearable thing. Because
that's where all the work is, and all the math's been done.
That's not true.
No, but it feels like it.
Since I've been doing this talk with the inertial sensors and talking more about Kalman filters, I've been thinking about making one.
A Kalman filter?
Yeah. To put on top of the Adafruit IMU.
That would be great, and people would really appreciate that, I think.
I know, but they're so hard to tune, and you have to tune it in your vehicle.
So you'd provide some reference...
Yeah.
You'd have to provide some reference designs. It says these are the constraints for this kind of thing. A four-wheeled robot, a quadcopter.
And there was a project to do this with UAVs.
Right.
But it didn't look like they ever really finished. They got started, they got a decent way through, and then I think
you'd have to treat it as not a drop-in, here's a Kalman filter, here you plug your sensors in and go.
It would be an educational thing.
Yeah, it would have to be, here's how you can explore this, and you'd have to learn what this means and how it works in order to integrate it into your system. But
yeah, I've been thinking with my I have the little light box that it's accelerometers and gyros and magnetometers in different modes, and it lights up according to the mode. I'm thinking about making it so that it showed the quaternion with multiple LEDs, so that you could see how the quaternion is related to 3-space. Because it isn't it's like such a mind weirdness to think about putting 3-space stuff into a 4-space quaternion, but it's not really that bad. You get a feel for how things change.
Useful.
Maybe I'll do that, and maybe Kalman eventually. We'll see.
But it seems like most of the business out there lately has been, we need this kind of thing. And so you go pick our modules for us and plug them together and write the code that drives all the modules, and you're done.
Well, lately I've been doing tiny startups with proof of concepts or coming in and closing it, getting a project that's stalled for some reason and getting it out the door.
Yeah.
And those are fun, but they're 3 and 6 month contracts, which don't quite give me enough time to dive into cool stuff. So, maybe August.
Yeah, that's when I'm retiring.
Shall we retire now?
I think so, because if I talk anymore, I'm going to have to stop for another fit of coughing.
That will make our 3rd, 4th, 6th.
I lost count.
Yeah. All right. Well, do you want to put the cowbell in here? Would you like me to scream? I can pretend to be the Wilhelm blah, 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 blah. The Wilhelm scream. Man.
Do you want me to leave that in?
Okay, so a lot of people don't believe that I stutter, and I thank Christopher for that. But in fact, I was a stutterer. I have always been a stutterer. I had many years of speech therapy for stuttering and for my inability to say S's.
Ethith.
The Wilhelm scream. Would you like me to try it?
Go for it.
No, I'll just cough. I'm going to call that enough of an intro to the outro.
Alrighty then.
Thank you, as always, to Christopher White for co-hosting and producing, and to you for listening. If you'd like to contact us, Embedded FM, hit the contact link on Embedded FM or email us, show@embedded.fm. Have a good week. We'll talk more next week. I think we'll be talking about learning embedded systems and whatever we learn at Solid, assuming I survive Solid. My final thought for you this week comes from the classics for those of you who really believe in what the Romans taught us. This one's from Seneca. There are more things to alarm us than to harm us, and we suffer more in apprehension than reality.